All right, friends, by popular demand in the comment section, I'm going to do a video on Menno Helmsman. Yes, because I had a request and I not subscribed to him, but I've done videos on him before. He's an interesting character, this gym lifting, recruiting fitness gear slate, or I don't know if he's gear. Maybe yes, maybe no. I don't know what he's doing, but he's definitely a recruiting slave in the fitness industry. But anyway, yeah, he gives out a lot of misinformation, but okay, whatever. So I'm going to react to Menno Helmsman's video. Menno Helmsman says, this is the best rep tempo for maximum gains. Yeah, okay, sure.
What is the best repetition tempo for maximum gains? Based on most influencers on YouTube, I get
That really makes no sense. What is the best tempo for gains? Well, these tempos and things, they don't give you gains. They have nothing to do with gains. See what I mean? You're talking about muscle gains? They don't have anything to do with any gains, but whatever.
the impression that the consensus view is relatively slow eccentric, meaning you lower your weights relatively slowly, the lengthening phase is performed slowly, and you do the concentric phase, the shortening phase, the lifting phase, rather explosively.
Okay, ask yourself this question. Why are you doing the eccentric phase really slow, and why are you doing the concentric phase explosively? Why? What's the purpose behind it? See what I mean? Ask yourself that question. If you can lower 2 times heavier the weight down, you understand me? But going up, it's, heavy is really hard going up, I mean, it all depends. Like, let's just say it goes up easily to the top. Well, then when you bring it down, it's going down a lot easier. Why? Because, well, it's lighter going down because you're going with gravity. It's called progressive overload. That's when it gets difficult. Okay, sorry. It gets difficult when you progressively overload the weight. Think about it. When you're on a bench press and you're laying down, what's the initiating movement on a bench press? The eccentric. You start with the eccentric. So that means that the weight goes down and then you press the weight up off your chest, right? What exactly, our question is this: what are you getting in the eccentric, and what are you getting by doing the concentric? See what I mean? But if you're adapted to the eccentric, what are you getting in the eccentric now going down? So eccentrics will get you what? They'll damage your muscle fibers, right? That's usually the idea. Eccentrics will damage muscle fibers, and then they'll adapt by growing bigger and stronger. See what I mean? So you get damaged, your muscles get bigger, they get stronger, and then you overload that weight again. You progressively overload that weight. So when it goes down heavier. See what I mean? Or whatever. It'll go down a little bit heavier than it did the last time. Okay, let's just put it that way. And you press it off your chest and it comes down again. Okay. Let's say that you've adapted, these eccentrics have adapted now. You adapted, you got a lot of muscle, whatever. It's not really damaged. It's protected. It's not getting damaged anymore. You're bringing it down and you're pressing it now. Now what are you getting? What have you become? Well, you're not getting damaged anymore. So then you are more inclined to do what? To come more often to the gym. So now you've turned into, how should I put it? An endurance slave, performing endurance slave, because it's based on endurance now and yada, yada, yada. Okay, what's associated with endurance? Well, people start carb loading, right? They endure, they carb load, and these carbs, they load a lot faster into the muscle because you are an endurance athlete now, performing endurance athlete, lifting concentrically because nice and comfortably because your eccentrics have adapted. See what I mean? You're not really focused on what it is you're trying to accomplish in the gym. You're not even thinking about the eccentrics have adapted and, well, maybe I'll just shoot for the moon. Get it? I'll shoot for the moon concentrically and hope for the best. And concentric does not build muscles. It's based on performance. It's based on endurance. And real bodybuilding is not based on either one of those fucking things. See what I mean? So there you go. Because real bodybuilding compromises sportive fucking performance, like it says in science. Why? Because it damages you, that's why. But if it isn't damaging you anymore, then you're a comfortable lifting, recruiting, fitness, gear, whatever, slave. This guy here. I don't know. I just like saying those words. Okay. You are just a comfortable lifting slave. Okay. Endurance, whatever. A fucking endurance slave. All right. Performing endurance slave. Sorry, man, I'm getting carried away because I keep looking at Menno when I'm talking about this video. I just want to fucking call him everything in the book, bro.
Study looked at this, so let's dig in. The researchers specifically looked at the effect of the eccentric durations, or the lowering phase, of barbell squats. One group squatted with a 1 second eccentric tempo, and the other group squatted with a 4 second eccentric tempo. The load was the same, they trained with the same frequency, and they trained to failure. So all else was equal.
Okay. And the question is this: are they adapted to these eccentrics? Most likely they are. And so he's trying to compare. Let me see what happens if now that I'm adapted to doing this eccentric exercise, right? Doing that particular exercise, I've adapted. Let me see what happens if I go really slow on the eccentric now, even though I'm adapted to it. Let's find out what will happen. Not saying that's a bad thing. You understand me?
Group did more faster repetitions and the other group did fewer slower repetitions, allowing us to investigate specifically the
fewer slower, but the other group did a bit more faster. Okay.
effect of the eccentric speed on muscle hypertrophy and strength development. An interesting little factoid about the study is that the subjects were endurance trained but not strength trained. In fact, they were highly
There's the word, endurance trained but not strength trained. What is strength to you? Getting damaged and growing physical strength, or just getting this chemical and force production strength? Get it? Nervous system strength. Boom. In the sky, the pie in the sky. Like, you really have to understand what strengths that the eccentric and concentric build. They build strength, but they don't build the strength the way you think they build it. You understand me? One is a lot more difficult than the other, and it takes much more time. See, if you're building muscle, if you're building myofibrillar growth, well, that's going to take you a lot longer. It takes patience. It takes a lot of work, intensity, duration. But concentric work, when you're doing concentric and trying to tweak the nervous system, recruit motor units, getting these androgen receptors for maximum force production, because you're adapted to your eccentrics, you don't really give a shit about them anymore. You don't want to get physically stronger. You want to get better at lifting a heavy weight, going against gravity. You don't want to go with gravity. You understand me? You want to go against gravity. Why? Because visually, it looks great for performance. Get it? You understand what I'm trying to explain to you? Visually, when you see people lifting concentrically, it appeals visually. And so eccentric exercise does not appeal to people because they just see weight going down. They don't understand what's going on there. In their head, they don't understand it's going down. We need to go up. We need to go into outer space. But when people go to outer space, guess what happens? They get small. They get weak. Do you understand me? Physically, they get small and weak when they go in space. But when they land on Earth, gravity pulling them down, they get big and strong. Due to what? Gravity. Get it? And so when you go down with weights, they do something very specific. They drag you down with gravity. So that also adds to the mass and the density and everything else. So the damage, the gravity and everything going down a lot heavier in eccentrics will always be superior to concentric. To build physical in the physical world, to build you physically big and strong. See what I mean? But you left the eccentric part out and you're just chasing concentric. And so you become a performing endurance slave. It's unfortunate, but it happens to a lot of people. And they get frustrated why they don't look the part, big and strong, because they want to look intimidating. See what I mean? But they don't look intimidating because they're a small, pretend strong guy. See what I mean? And they don't like that. And they don't like people that built themselves big and strong. They feel intimidated by that, and they'll constantly jump on you and tell you that you're not strong because you can't do 1 or 2 or maybe 3 lifts concentrically as heavy as they can do, but yet you are physically bigger than they are. See what I mean? And so that is the problem in the lifting world. So then you get these concentric lifters that are the small, strong guys, always complaining about the big guys. They must be fake natties. See what I mean? They're fake natty. I'm talking about when it comes to the natural world, okay? I'm not talking about steroid people. And so, they get upset with these guys. They say, well, they're fake nannies, da, 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 da. They must be on steroids, da, because they're big. They have all these muscles, blah. They're big and strong. They're big and strong, but I'm small and I'm strong, but they're big and strong, and I'm small and I'm strong, and da, da, da. They get crazy. And then those big, strong guys, they don't complain about people that are just lifting concentrically and are small and are presumably weak in their minds. In their own minds, they see themselves as weak. But when they see big, strong people, they get intimidated. And so the first thing they do that comes out of their mouth, well, they must be a fake natty. Well, not everybody's this so-called fake natty, bro. A lot of people do eccentric work out there. You need to look around. It's a big world. Not everybody just does concentric lifting and wants to stay small and weak. Get it? They don't want to be small and weak, but strong at concentric lifts. They want to be big and strong all around. It's totally different. Now, if you put in the work, but you're going to say, well, they put in the work, steroids and this and that. And people tell you stupid stuff. They put in the work lifting concentrically. No, they didn't, because concentric didn't work for them in the beginning, okay? It has nothing to do with building muscle strength and all that, muscles and all that. It doesn't. It doesn't do that. It does something totally different. Goes against gravity, so you're recruiting motor units, the nervous system, and some androgen receptors. But eccentric exercise does all that and more. That's the difference. That's why it's superior. When science is telling you eccentric is superior, because it does much more things. So if something gives you more, there's more out of it, it must be superior. Because concentric can only do what? Nothing. Recruit motor units, maybe, yeah, some androgen receptors, force production, and I don't know, whatever. These motor units and whatever. Okay, dude, and the nervous system. But there's no muscle growth, there's no damage, no muscle growth, there's no regeneration. It doesn't do anything, have nothing to do with removing senescent cells or getting rid of myogenic decline or any of these kind of things, bro. Do you understand me? It doesn't do any of these kind of things. And plus, you're going to recruit more motor units going down with the downforce, gravity, and all that. So it's going to recruit more of these androgen receptors as well. It's going to give you fucking higher hormone count, that's for sure. Your hormones are going to be through the roof. It's elevated for the entire week during the repair and remodeling. There's lots of stuff that go into eccentric that is a lot more superior than concentric, okay?
Strains. The researchers noted as part of their normal academic curriculum, participants engaged in 6 to 8 hours of low to high intensity exercise per week, but they were specifically not strength trained. So they were basically doing 6 to 8 hours of cardio per week. I don't know for what study that's normal academic curriculum, but I don't want none of that. The main finding was that after the 7-week study, which is a little bit short, there was no significant difference in total quadriceps muscle growth between the groups. This finding is in line with a previous 2022 review, which concluded that overall evidence supports eccentric contractions below 2 seconds duration to improve subsequent concentric performance. So they recommend not decreasing your eccentric speed too much to improve strength development. We'll get to strength development of this study in a bit more.
Yeah. I mean, you can go slow on the eccentric, but it's adapted to these weights. I mean, Christ, man. I think people don't understand that. That the overload of the eccentric is just meaning that it's going to cause a relative amount of micro damage. But eventually that will adapt to that weight, and whatever it is that you're doing, you need to do a lot more of it. They tell you, look, it's not just in science. My experience tells me intensity and duration. These are just things that I know. I don't need science to tell me any of these things. I already know because I've experienced doing this. Done it a long time ago. So duration and intensity is very important, especially if you are adapted to these eccentrics, because you're trying to move more heavy concentric. It's not that you're really focused on it. You're just simply going heavier and heavier, but you don't realize what's making you stronger. Let's say that you do intensity and duration in your exercise regime, and you do a full upper body on the day. A full upper body, 5 times 10, 5 times 10, 5 times 10 for the chest, back, this, that. Every fucking muscle group you can imagine, 5 times 10. And then you wake up the next day and you're fucking damaged for a couple of days. And then you repair, remodel, you get bigger, stronger, this, that. Okay, you come back. And I don't know, You add a little bit more duration, a little bit more intensity. You're kind of doing the same way, but not exactly. You know what I mean? And you're just doing a little bit more than the last time. Well, this damage will come back again. And you should get a little slightly bigger and stronger the next time you come back because you're unaccustomed to extending this duration and intensity. You understand? The duration means intensity. Look, intensity goes with duration. If the session is quite long, then that means it's quite intense. That's what they're talking about in science. So if you're working out for 4 hours, it means that you're overworking those muscles. Why are you overworking them? Well, because let's just say, for an example, you're not specifically doing a eccentric overload. You're just doing eccentric concentric lifting. So the duration, meaning the session that you're in, and the intensity just means it goes with that session, how long it goes. Was there a lot of intent? Was it intense? Well, if the session was short, then there's no intensity, right? Now, if it is longer, the duration is longer, then obviously it comes after that. You understand me? So there you go. The intensity will come with the duration. But if the duration is short, there is no intensity. Therefore, you may not get damaged at all. See what I mean? That's what I'm talking. People ask me, "Oh, it's a 4-hour session or a 3-hour session you worked out for 3 or 4 hours. That's quite long." Yeah, but I'm only doing it once a week. See what I mean? The duration just means that I put in enough intensity to get this damage. See what I mean? I know because I put in 3 or 4 hours. But if I had put in an hour to do my whole upper body on the day, well, then the duration is short. Therefore, there is no intensity. The intensity was extremely low, and I know for a fact that I will not get damaged. See, here's the thing. I know that on that day, even if I do just a regular eccentric, full range of motion, eccentric concentric lift, I know on the day whether I will get damaged or not. And what is it based on? Intensity and duration. So if that duration is shorter, then the intensity is shorter. But if that duration lasted a lot longer, then the intensity obviously was a lot longer. And therefore, I've overworked those muscles enough to get them to damage just by using full range of motion in that session, which a lot of people don't realize. They don't understand that. But like I said, if it was shorter, even though I did the same routine, but it was shorter in duration, then that means that intensity was shorter, and I'll wake up the next day and I will not have this damage. It's simple. It's just simple like that.
Detail later, and they continued, there is no clear difference between using eccentric tempos of 2 to 6 seconds if the aim is to increase hypertrophic response and strength. So basically they said that if you slow your eccentric phases down a lot, it might hurt strength development, and it doesn't have any.
Okay, in the old days, back way when, whatever you want to call old days, I don't know, way back when I was lifting, there were people that did that. They go, oh, you have to go slow. You have to do your repetition slow. But the problem was, I think still they didn't really understand it, because not only did they go slow on the eccentric, but they went slow on the concentric. So they were going up slow, bringing it down slow, because they weren't sure. They weren't sure. They were just trying things because they didn't know. They never really realized that eccentric exercise is what you're trying to shoot for. They just didn't know. It didn't cross their mind. You understand me? Didn't think about it. You understand what I'm trying to explain to you? Because people don't know what bodybuilding is. They don't understand it. And then they have all these steroid people out there, and they have these magazines and Joe Weider and all that faking it. How the fuck would they ever know? How could they possibly know? See what I mean? So I discovered it through trial and error. I just happened to have time and money, and I just said to myself, I think I'm just gonna, do a full body workout and go down to the buffet and eat a lot of food, and I should get bigger just by doing that. But what happened was the next day I woke up and I was like sore as hell. It lasted for days. And it's not like I didn't know that, some movements that I did like eccentrically got me this damage, but I never really put it together that that's what was making me bigger or stronger or whatever, the eccentrics. You don't really think about why does your body do this? Why does this happen? And yada 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 yada. For what purpose is this? Why does it get sore? Why does it get damaged? Why doesn't it get damaged anymore after the second session or the third or the fourth? See what I mean? Why did it do that in the beginning but not anymore? And so, but here's the thing. But why did it keep getting damaged when the duration was longer and therefore the intensity was longer in the session? And every time I came back and I still did eccentric, concentric, and even though it went down lighter, it goes down light on the eccentric, I still managed to bring this damage to come back and I still got bigger and stronger. So why does it keep working well doing that? See what I mean? You have to question everything. Now, the other part, a shortcut to getting big really fast just means that you can eccentrically overload, you can overload the eccentric in your exercises, getting massive amounts of damage. That you have to be careful with that. See what I mean? Now you may need a few more extra days off. See, what I was doing in the beginning, 7 days is good enough. But if you're getting massive amounts of damage, sometimes you need 10 days off. And you'll find you're going to be sleeping a lot. Like you're going to have deep sleeps for hours because such damage eccentrically overloading the eccentric is going to cause a massive amount of damage. And your body, it's just, hey man, it's going to sleep, bro, because it needs to repair and remodel. See what I mean? So that could also sap your energy. I don't know. For some people, I know that when I've done some heavy eccentric overloads, it saps my energy. See what I mean? So what do I gotta do? Man, I gotta eat a lot more animal fat since I don't eat carbs. I gotta load up on more animal fat. I gotta load up on raw eggs and stuff like that. See what I mean? I need higher cholesterol count and a bunch of stuff because it's going to sap the shit out of your energy. And I have to go to sleep earlier because I need more hours in sleep.
Effect on muscle growth. Some researchers also found that mechanistically speaking, we get to the same level of glycogen depletion in type 1 and type 2 muscle fibers, regardless of our repetition tempo.
Well, because they're glycolytic. That's why they're glycolytic. That's what happens to people that become lifting slaves. They don't realize that these fibers are glycolytic. And so you're performing endurance slave now, and they're glycolytic, bro. Get it? There's oxidative and glycolytic.
So provided we get to the same endpoint. So you can do more faster repetitions or fewer slower repetitions.
I mean, it's not important, but it's good to understand which ones are glycolytic, which ones are oxidative, and why are they doing what they're doing? Why does this happen? Why you have to question everything. Why doesn't this damage come back? Why is it lighter going down, heavier going up? A bunch of stuff.
You get to the same level of muscular fatigue in the end, and therefore the muscles are doing the same amount of work, and therefore you get the same amount of muscle growth. Now, in the new specific study, though, there was a curious...
You don't. Muscles only grow because they need to adapt so they don't get damaged. That's the whole idea. They adapt by not wanting to get damaged. They don't want to get damaged and big. That's why people opt for concentric exercises, because in nature, it doesn't want you to build muscle, but it will definitely give you a more force, give you a force production chemically, like chemical, nervous system, and androgen receptor, all that combined, giving you a force production in the opposite direction of gravity. Because the majority of things that you're doing on this planet usually requires a lot of concentric work. Not to say that it doesn't require eccentric, but it will adapt if it gets these micro damages by growing bigger and stronger. And now it's resistant from getting damaged. And so that's where muscle grows. It grows because of this damage, but no more damage, no more growth. But you want to build muscle, then you're going to have to repeatedly damage those muscles in the eccentric to get them, to force them to keep growing bigger and stronger. And every time you come back, you damage, you get bigger, you get stronger. Get it? And you lift heavier.
Finding, because specifically for the vastus lateralis, the sweep of the quads, there was greater muscle growth, significantly greater muscle growth in the slower eccentric training group. Now, how do we interpret this?
Not saying that there isn't any growth doing a squat. Squat is probably one of the best things for growth. So there's a heavy weight on your back, and you're going up and down. Where you going with you're going with gravity down. See what I mean? And even if you are going up in the concentric, you're still standing there. The weight is putting pressure on your bones and your muscle down eccentrically, even if you are going concentrically up with the weight. The only difference is when you go eccentrically, that just means that your legs have folded in the eccentric. In other words, you're going ass to grass and you're going back up again. So there's a huge stretch on the quads and your hamstrings and your your ligaments and tendons, not your hamstrings, your ligaments and your tendons and your quads and stuff and your legs, okay? I don't know, maybe a little bit in the hamstring, it's a possibility, whatever.
What I've seen from most people looking at this study is that they say, there is in fact greater muscle hypertrophy when we slow down our eccentrics. Because
yeah, ask yourself, why is that? Why is there greater hypertrophy? Why is there at all any hypertrophy in eccentrics if you slow it down? If you slow it down, why? Because there's something going on there. What is it? It's something you're unaccustomed to doing. You've never slowed it down before, and so you're slowing it down now. Something has to give, maybe some micro injuries, micro tears or whatever. That's about it. And so it hypertrophies.
We get greater growth in the vastus lateralis. However,
you always get greater growth eccentrically because that's where growth happens. It doesn't happen concentrically.
No significantly greater growth in the total quadriceps as a whole. Moreover, none of the other 4 regions that were measured showed significantly greater muscle growth. So the greater growth in that one.
So why didn't they overload the eccentric then, Menno? So they could get more growth.
Region could easily be a fluke. In statistical terms, this is a type 1 error. Type 1 error can be thought of as a false positive. If you just test a whole bunch of different things, especially in a smaller, shorter study, then some of those things will end up being different between groups simply by chance. Like every time you do a study with measurements in every individual subject, maybe some of the subjects were just training harder, maybe some of them had better genetics, maybe some of them have different diet.
I don't know what's this better genetic thing, but yes, maybe some were training with more intensity and duration, which will be intensity, means duration, and some were not. That's all. Intensity just means duration. That's all it means.
Or something happened in the study. Simply by chance, there are individuals that get different results, and even with randomization, sometimes more of those individuals that had results in favor of one direction were in one group, and therefore you get that one group having that result. Plus, you simply have measurement error, where if you do a whole bunch of measurements, and every measurement, especially with ultrasound, as was used in this study, which is sensitive to the operator's proficiency, if you get some bias or error there, then you can get these random flukes. An analogy that I often see in clients is when they do a DEXA scan and they kind of obsess over the left arm versus right arm differences. Is my left arm growing versus the previous scan? And those single site measurements are simply not very accurate. The total body fat percentage estimate from the body as a whole on your DEXA scan is reasonably accurate. Like it can still be off in a couple percent. So even a DEXA scan is not a great way to measure your progress on an individual level. It's good in groups, but at the individual level, not so much. But if you look at individual sites, the DEXA scan is really not accurate, not even at a group level. So
no, DEXA scans can't distinguish between sarcoplasmic and myofibrillar growth. It can't distinguish because science tells you that.
Difference between right arm, left arm is just such a small area that the DEXA scan will not be that accurate. And also with ultrasound, if you do 4 different measurements, then the chance of one of them being off is much greater than if you sum all of them together and you look at the total. The total is by far the most reliable. Basically, if you're saying that there was more muscle growth, you have to explain why, well, there wasn't actually more total muscle growth. Because if you look at the total amount of quadriceps muscle growth, it was nearly identical between the groups. An alternative way to interpret this is that there's regional hypertrophy. Some research indeed supports that the quadriceps has regional hypertrophy, where the eccentric phase may activate the vastus lateralis more, thereby accentuating the eccentric phase might quad sweep versus the teardrop, the VMO near the knee. I don't think this is a particularly strong interpretation because research on regional differentiation in the quadriceps is very scarce. The quadriceps is a very simple muscle. It just extends the knee, that's it, at least the vasti muscles. So if you look at something like the hamstrings or the deltoids, yes, we see significant functional differentiation. The different muscle heads even have different functions, so you can individually train certain heads and not the other heads, but with the quads, that's not possible. Most most of the myths of, squatting with your knees in, narrow stance, targeting the VMO, get more teardrop with special types of squats. Those have all been debunked, so there isn't very strong evidence for regional differentiation within the quadriceps muscles.
Okay, yeah, I probably would agree with him there. I don't know. A specific exercise for the teardrop, there isn't any really. You can try. I mean, I think they tell you on the, what is it, the quad machine, you can, change your stance. Like your legs can be outer, middle, or inner. They tell you can do the inner part. Well, you can try those. I don't know. I've not really tried that, but whatever.
Still, if we're not going by regional hypertrophy, and we're also not assuming that this is a fluke, the study would provide some evidence in favor of slower eccentric speeds. However, if we're looking at regional measurements to support a case, then I can also...
But why? Why does it have to go slower, and why does concentric have to go up explosively? That's what he says. He says explosive on the concentric, but slow on the eccentric. Why is that? Why not go fast on the eccentric and go really slow on the concentric? Well, you want to know why? Because if you go too fast on the eccentric, you could get permanently injured. That's the difference. But going concentrically fast, well, that just, takes the stress off, right? Trying to go slow up. It'll take you really forever to get there at the top. You know what I mean? If you're going heavy, yeah, this whole explosive thing ain't really working. But okay.
So pull up, for example, Pearson et al., which found actually greater growth with a faster eccentric tempo, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me because theoretically you would expect that
more growth with a faster tempo. Well, fast definitely causes more damage, yes.
That's some degree of slowing down the eccentric, or at least controlling the eccentric.
You're asking me fast eccentrics is what you got to do to cause these micro injuries. The movements have to be fast. That's all. Because you're dealing with type 2 muscle fibers. You want them to get damaged.
Should be positive because you are stronger during the eccentric. If you're not controlling the eccentric, you're basically just dive bombing down.
Why are you stronger in the concentric?
Then there's essentially no eccentric muscle contraction, and you're just completely neglecting that phase of the movement, which is actually where we can get a lot of mechanical muscle tension. But that's all theoretical. In the end,
we get mechanical tension. That's what lifting is, mechanical tension. Lifting weights means mechanical tension. I don't understand what these people are trying to tell you. Some people in the comment section, they write stupid shit about, I told you, mechanical tension is the thing of muscle growth. No, mechanical tension is the means to damage muscles. It's the movement that damages muscles. Mechanical tension is the exercise, the movement that damages muscles. You get it, man? Emotional damage.
We want empirical hard data. So in the Pearson study, they looked at leg extensions performed with either a 1 second or a 3 second eccentric duration. And interestingly, the 1 second eccentric duration group had greater gains in the distal quads. However, total quadricep size and strength gains were similar between groups.
Okay, but how long did it last for after they adapted to these exercises? Once they adapt to them, what do you got to do now to get out of it, Menno? See, here's the thing what Menno doesn't tell you. He says, well, these people did this slow this or they did this quadricep, But of course, you know that the muscle will rapidly adapt and there won't be any more activity or gains or anything going on there anymore. So he doesn't really explain to you, how do we keep getting them to keep coming on? That's the difference between my channel and his shitty channel, get it? I tell you how to keep those gains going.
So again, I think it's most important to look at these total numbers. They are the most reliable and they are the most in line with the total body of research that we have.
They're not important. We just need to know the difference between concentric and eccentric lifts and what do they do. That's all we need to know. That's it.
Most research does not support much effect of repetition tempo on muscle hypertrophy. By the way, do you like my content? Then you'll love my online PT certification course. Instead of
the tempo on muscle hypertrophy, man, this guy just doesn't make any sense.
Spending 10 years sifting through misinformation and being development and health sciences into a practical counter reviews
I don't want to know.
of our former students in the link below. To my knowledge, we have the high
No thanks.
strength development, this study had an even crazier finding because the 4-second eccentric group in this study actually gained significantly more strength. 1RM strength gains were greater in the squat group doing 4-second eccentrics.
So why did they gain more strength doing the eccentrics? You want to know why they got stronger? Because they built more muscle. That's why. Duh.
And the group doing the 1-second eccentrics. And this directly contradicts the earlier review and a study by Shibata et al. From 2021. They looked at squats with either a 2 or a 4-second eccentric tempo, and they found that strength gains were greater with the 2-second eccentric tempo. This makes sense because strength gains are velocity specific, and there is a thing called the stretch reflex.
Yes, they're velocity specific. That's why I recommend runners do a lot of eccentric work, because that builds muscles. It recruits these type 2 muscle fibers, and that's what makes you faster. And they build longer in parallel in series. They grow better in series and in parallel. Okay, man, that's what they do by doing the eccentric work. They will do both. They do both, parallel and in series. They grow. That's how they grow.
Flex, whereby if you lower a weight a bit more rapidly, still under control, but a bit more rapidly, you get what's called a stretch reflex. And this is not just elastic tension like you bounce on your tendons. There's actually also a signal.
They cause damage, man, to the fibers so that they can grow in series and in parallel.
Being sent from the brain to the muscle when it is lengthening, especially when it is lengthening more rapidly, to activate.
Right, lengthening. And if they lengthen, they will exude more force production. Look, if they lengthen in series, right, the sarcomeres, okay, these myofibulars, then they give you more force production. You understand what I'm trying to explain to you? Because you don't get them when they shorten. In the concentric, they shorten, therefore you're not getting them. But if you get them eccentrically, then your force production must go up. Why? Because they're longer now. You have something to push off of, okay?
The muscle, so you get higher levels of muscle activity. Active muscle tension is a little bit higher when you do a faster eccentric repetition. So mechanistically, it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
That a faster eccentric repetition would be better for strength development, especially if you want to be stronger with that.
No, a faster is better for strength development. A faster eccentric is better to cause damage so that you can grow these sarcomeres in series. Get it, dude? What planet is fucking Menno on? Like, fuck.
That's repetition. If you have to do a very slow 1RM, then maybe it's better to actually train at that repetition speed. It's interesting that these studies had essentially polar opposite conclusions because they were both on squats, they were both on essentially endurance-trained individuals, because in the Shibata study they were soccer players.
Endurance trained. So he thinks that endurances are soccer players, but lifters in the gym can be endurance. Concentric lifters can be endurance too. Get it? They're performing and it's endurance because that's what it is. You're coming in often. It's endurance. In eccentric exercise, you cannot come often to the gym. You're damaged. Why would you come in there? That's just retarded.
And they both used a relatively similar training intensity. However, the Shibata study, the older one,
They both use a similar intensity. Okay. A duration. What's associated with endurance? Duration. So that he says intensity. Intensity and duration are kind of the same thing. If the intensity is shorter, you understand me? That means the duration is shorter. And if it's shorter, then there's not a lot of damage going on there. See what I mean? But in this case, these guys are adapted. Their eccentrics are adapted. They're endurance athletes. They're performing. They're not getting any of these things.
they had an intensity of 75% of 1RM, and in the current new study, they used an intensity of 60 to 70% of 1RM. And if you look at the number of repetitions that they did here, you can see that the repetitions were very high. And I think this might be a reason that the faster tempo group in this study was doing essentially the reps at 15 rep max, which is very high for squats. So maybe that's the reason that that was inferior.
Well, there's a lot of stuff going on when it comes to squats. There's a heavy weight on your back. It's weighing down on you eccentrically with gravity. Yeah. It's not like you can take this weight off. You know, whatever.
For strength development, you actually run into issues with just cardio, getting out of breath, not being as explosive. Squats don't lend themselves particularly well to doing sets of 15 for most individuals. So how do we interpret this?
How do you know that? Did you try it yourself? I've done it. Works quite well, Menno.
New study in light of all previous research. I think
Even your muscles are so big, your leg muscles, glutes and leg muscles and everything are so big, they require a lot of sets squatting to cause them to damage in the eccentric form. That's all. Some people, they just can't take it and then they leave and then they don't get enough damage, or they didn't get any damage or whatever. It depends on the person, bro. Get it? Legs can be very taxing for some people, especially eccentric. He's focusing eccentrically, doing these exercises. They don't like it, so they stick their ass out. I call it sticking their ass out halfway and then pumping their ass so they can go back up concentrically. See what I mean? Because it's uncomfortable. Eccentric exercises are uncomfortable, and if they're uncomfortable, these people, they won't do it, and then they just love complaining.
a lot of people, and I see this all the time now on social media, people hyper-focus on these individual findings of individual studies. And they're like, oh, one study says this, one study says this, and like every new study says something completely different. And they're just getting completely lost in these minor details. It's normal and expected that every time you do a study...
I don't use any studies. I bring out evidence. I talk about things on my channel, but I don't talk about those things.
The findings are going to differ a little bit. So if you take a little bit of a bigger picture look, it's actually very clear that most research does not find significant differences on strength development or muscle growth of the eccentric speed. If you look at some of the individual studies and also in the current new studies, I do think that it is very important that you control the eccentric phase, even if simply...
Again, if you're adapted, you're not going to get any more adaptations in the eccentric. So regardless whether you go slow or fast, the tempo, bro, if you're adapted to those eccentric exercises, then they will not give you any more adaptation. So what do you need to do to eke out a different adaptation but doing the same weight? Well, you're going to have to increase the what? The duration, which will increase the what? The intensity, something that some people, they don't like. In other words, you may have to bring it all the way to 20. If you were doing 10 sets, then now you have to go to 20. And then soon you'll have to go to 25, then 30. You understand me? If you're doing pretty much the same weight as light going down, it's not called a eccentric overload. You understand me? It's not called eccentric overload. You have you're overloading the concentric going the opposite direction. That's what you believe you're doing. You're more focused on the concentric. You're not focused on the eccentric, so it's always going down lighter than the last time, and it gets very protected where it just doesn't damage anymore. So it's a waste.
Theoretically, mechanistically, we know that the eccentric muscle phase is where you can generate very high mechanical tension, and we know that mechanical tension is...
Of course, yeah. You can generate more on the eccentric. Takes up less energy too.
Primary driver of muscle growth. So it makes perfect sense that we have to have a significant...
The primary thing of muscle growth, mechanical tension? No, it's the primary thing that causes muscles to damage eccentrically, you fool. And then they adapt by getting bigger and stronger.
Eccentric muscle contraction during every repetition. As long as you are controlling the descent, then you're probably fine and you don't have to actively slow down your repetitions. No.
Okay, so how do you control the descent? What if it's super heavy? You in control? What if it goes all the way down and crashes on you? You fucking die.
As for the concentric speed, the new study didn't touch on that, but the short version is that for strength development, research is quite clear that you want an explosive concentric, and for muscle growth, it doesn't matter so much. You probably want to focus on a repetition tempo that allows you to perform as many repetitions as you can. But again, most research is in line that repetition tempo just doesn't have much...
Not necessarily. He's making this shit up, man.
...effect on your gains. So you can use whatever tempo you personally prefer. In that sense, I do recommend that people don't count the repetitions because...
In science, they just tell you a couple things. They tell you that untrained muscles are associated, untrained, unfamiliar forms, and unaccustomed exercises are going to get you this damage. But how you do things unaccustomed, how you see that visually, meaning the word unaccustomed, means that you did do that exercise before, but now you upped the duration, therefore you upped the intensity, therefore you're unaccustomed to doing that. So if the session, if the session was longer than the last time, the duration, you understand me? Therefore, there's more intensity. You may be able to bring back this damage again, even though you're doing the same weights. Why? Because the duration, the intensity is a lot longer. See what I mean? You're unaccustomed to doing that. So, yeah. And if you're unfamiliar doing these things, or exercises that you have never done before, let's just say, and you do them the first time, of course you're going to get this damage. See what I mean? You understand how it works? But in eccentric exercise, you literally can do your whole upper body on the day with intensity, with the duration and intensity, or intensity and duration. It's the same thing. The duration of it, it's very intense. Okay. And so you will bring this damage back all the time, even though you're doing full range of motion. See? So do you have to progressively overload the eccentric to get this damage? No, not necessarily. That just means that you're in a hurry or you're taking a shortcut. You want to get massive amounts of damage eccentrically, get it? To grow bigger, faster, and stronger faster. That's why you want to go faster. See what I mean?
Seconds eccentric duration during your squat is a hell of a long time. Try actually doing it with a metronome and you'll see nobody does.
Or you want to bust through a plateau. If you're trying to bust through, let's say you've been doing the full range of motion, eccentric, concentric, you figured out how to bring this damage back through duration, intensity, but now you're like, you know what, I got to a point where I'm kind of really adapted now. I can't really go further. So I'm not interested too much with the intensity and duration. I just want to bust through some plateau because the gains aren't really coming on. I reached a certain, now I'm 255, 260. I want to go to 70, maybe 280, maybe 290, 300. I want to go higher. So what I need to do? Well, still eventually you're going to have to put in again the duration and intensity, even if you are overloading the eccentric. It's just like that because you need to eke out more of these adaptations, and so you have to be unaccustomed every time to the new session that comes in, the duration and the intensity of it. It may be the duration may be longer, therefore the intensity is a lot more. There's more intensity because the duration is a lot longer. Get it?
4-second eccentric contraction outside of these studies where there's literally some guy timing you. So I recommend just controlling the descent but not worrying about counting or any specific tempo, and then lifting the weight either explosively if your goal is strength or just lifting it in a way that allows you to do as many reps as you.
I love this one. If just lifting it rapidly if your goal is strength. My goal is strength. So why? He just said that the eccentric people got more strength. They got stronger doing eccentric exercise. And he says if your goal is to get strong, just do it rapidly, concentrically. What strength? What strength? If your body didn't grow big and strong, what strength? What are you talking about? See what I mean? You get this kind of ignorance everywhere from these influencers online. They're stupid. But then people will convince you hypertrophy work. But you don't get stronger doing hypertrophy work. We don't get stronger doing hypertrophy work. Absolutely, that doesn't make sense. And concentric exercise does not hypertrophy muscles. It's really simple. Doesn't do anything. Now, how will concentric hypertrophy muscles? Not myofibrillar. It won't hypertrophy through myofibrillar. What it will do, though, it will hypertrophy through the sarcoplasm because now you're pumping your muscles. Get it? You're compressing them. That's what you're doing.
Can for muscle hypertrophy. Right, I hope that helps you with your gains. If you like this type of evidence-based content,
I don't think it's going to help you. I see you in the next one. Tell us what you think about that. Thanks for support the channel, man. This guy is really weird.